NBC4 has confirmed the death of Ohio Senator and former astronaut John Glenn. Good evening. I'm Katie Farrell.
I'm Colleen Marshall. Thanks for joining us. John Glenn, a native of New Concord, was an Ohio legend, an American hero who dedicated his life to public service. We honor him now by taking an historic look back at the man who called Ohio home. America was first introduced to John Glenn in 1959 when the newly formed NASA named him one of America's 7 original astronauts. Glenn made history in 1962, blasting into space aboard Friendship 7. He became the first American to orbit the Earth, orbiting 3 times before his capsule came down in the Atlantic Ocean. Glenn returned to a hero's welcome, including a ticker tape parade in New York City. Glenn wanted to fly again, but President Kennedy thought another trip would be too risky and grounded the space hero. He retired from NASA and began the next phase of his life, serving 4 terms as a Democratic senator from Ohio. In 1984, Glenn ran unsuccessfully for president. At 77, NASA gave him another opportunity, a chance to become the first senior citizen to go into space.
Although I always wanted to go up again, I never thought that age would become an advantage.
Glenn went through a battery of physical tests, and then in October 1998,
liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
Glenn spent almost 9 days in space, conducting more than 80 experiments on weightlessness and aging, and reflecting on his experience.
I don't think you could be up here and look out the window out at this kind of creation out here and not believe in God.
In 2012, President Obama presented Glenn with the highest civilian honor, the Medal of Freedom. Throughout his life, John Glenn called himself a very lucky man.
Godspeed, John Glenn.
Very lucky indeed. Tonight, NBC4 has team coverage of Glenn's death. Olivia Fecto is live at COSI, where a replica of Friendship 7 is on display.
Sean Lanier is on the OSU campus. That's where the school named one of their buildings after John Glenn. But first, let's get right to NBC4's Ted Hart. He's at the Wexner Medical Center, where John Glenn died today. Ted?
Yeah, John Glenn was admitted here to the James Cancer Center at the OSU Wexner Medical Center more than a week ago. It wasn't long before it became apparent to those close to him that he would not likely recover, and he died here this afternoon at the hospital. And though he was 95 and had had a few health bumps along the way, he really was overall remarkably healthy in his later years. Statements, of course, about his passing today are pouring in from around the country. From President Obama this afternoon, he says, John always had the right stuff, inspiring generations of scientists, engineers, and astronauts. And from President-elect Donald Trump, he was a hero and inspired generations of future explorers. From our governor, John Kasich, he says, though he soared deep into space and to the heights of Capitol Hill, his heart never strayed from his steadfast Ohio roots. Godspeed, John Glenn. And from Ohio State University's President Michael Drake this afternoon, he says the Ohio State University community deeply mourns the loss of John Glenn, Ohio's consummate public servant and a true American hero. He leaves an undiminished legacy as one of the great people of our time. And as extraordinary as John Glenn was, he was also in many ways just kind of one of us. I remember the last time I ran into John Glenn was at a Target. He was standing in the checkout line with his wife, Annie, and you know, anyone who met him knows that you know, you could feel that he was a good man. He was a kind man, always patient with those people in a checkout line or wherever who wanted to just shake his hand or have a picture taken. Live at Ohio State University, Ted Hart, NBC4.
Ted, that's so funny. I also have run into John Glenn at that same Target. I think he and Annie spent a lot of time there. And one of the many honors bestowed on John Glenn was the renaming of Ohio State's College of Public Affairs. The university says his legacy inspires future leaders and public servants of our nation. NBC4's Sean Lanier is continuing our team coverage now, joining us live outside John Glenn's office at the Ohio State University. Sean?
Well, that's right. His office was right upstairs, but right now you can see that there has been one memorial flower laid on the steps outside of this building. It meant a lot to the people inside of this building. We were able to speak with the dean of this college, and he said that while John will be missed, his spirit will forever live in this building because he was here, they say, about once a week to meet with faculty and students in here. We know that he had a long career as a U.S. Senator, 24 years. The dean said he spoke with John Glenn about 2 weeks ago, again, about his failing health, about just the public affairs that's going on around the world. He was very astute in talking about that and really lit up when he was able to talk about that. But one of the things that he did mention was here at this college is was the impact that he had on students. Again, he came here about once a week up until about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He was here in his office mingling with students. Here's what the dean of the college had to say. Take a listen.
Very open guy. If he saw a student in the hall, he'd chat him up, occasionally surprise him, sit down beside him and say, hey, what are you studying? That continued all the way until the end. He was very, very approachable.
And he was very approachable and very liked. He just wanted to be seen as a normal person here on campus, but a lot of people, of course, thought of him as a great leader, and that's what he wanted people here and students here to become, were great leaders and great public servants, which he did for so long. And of course, the dean also said that he was very open about talking about his own personal problems and his own personal struggles. We'll have some of that coming up a little later. Reporting live on OSU's campus, Sean Lanier, NBC4.
Sean, thank you. John Glenn orbited the Earth in the spacecraft Friendship 7 more than 50 years ago. The original is currently on display at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., but a replica sits right here in Columbus. NBC4's Olivia Fecto continues our breaking news coverage now. She's joining us live from COSI. Olivia?
Yeah, it's clear how much John Glenn meant to COSI and this place to him. Take a look at this picture. This is a photo of John Glenn back in 1964 when COSI first opened, handing over money for a membership. COSI says throughout the years, John Glenn has been a friend and a benefactor. This right here is a replica of Friendship 7. That was Glenn's capsule launched from the top of the Atlas rocket from Cape Canaveral back in 1962. Now, as many of us know, Glenn was the first American to orbit the Earth in February of 1962 as an estimated 60 million people watched on TV. Glenn circled the Earth 3 times in just under 5 hours. In 1998, and this of course is what people of my generation remember of him, he was the oldest person to return to space, at that point 77 years old. The president of COSI, who we talked to this afternoon, says Glenn was brilliant but always humble.
He's an example of what America is at its best. Always humble. Always generous. If he wasn't humble enough, Annie would make sure he was humble.
The president here says he knows COSI was just one of many places and people to which Glenn gave his time and his energy. Of course, we've heard a lot about that just so far in the last few minutes. We'll have more coming up at 5:30. For now, we are live at COSI. Olivia Fecto, NBC4.
Olivia, thank you.